Tonight on Currents News, the ex-cop seen with his knee pinning George Floyd to the ground is under arrest. Floyd's death sparking riots in Minneapolis, where troops are now on patrol. In New York City, cops clashed with demonstrators. A lot of people were locked up.
And tensions are still high as more unrest is expected in the city and around the country. I'm Jessica Easthope, standing by in Union Square with the latest.
A new President Trump tweet about looting and shooting is getting flagged by the social media giant as a violation. A date is being targeted for the reopening of New York City. Plus this.
Want to stay safe while also getting your family out of the house this summer? Well, I'm Emily Drewby with a look at the hottest ticket around.
And the doctor is in. He'll tell us about keeping your immune system safe. The news starts right now.
Please, I can't breathe. Please.
The ex-cop seen on video using his knee to pin down George Floyd is under arrest tonight, charged with murder. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. The former Minneapolis cop under arrest, Derek Chauvin, and 3 more officers were fired after the Floyd killing. Chauvin is facing state criminal charges. The other 3 are still being investigated. The news comes after unrest and violence gripped many parts of the country, including New York's Union Square. That's where Currents News' Jessica Easthope is standing by. Jessica.
Christine, protests erupted in cities across the country in response to the death of George Floyd. Here in New York City, the NYPD arrested more than 70 people, but were largely able to control the crowd. That wasn't the case in Minneapolis, the city where Floyd died. The National Guard is patrolling the streets of the city at this hour after riots raged for a 3rd straight night. Some of the worst violence took place at a Minneapolis police precinct. It was overrun and set on fire. No one in the precinct was hurt because Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey ordered everyone to evacuate Friday morning.
The symbolism of a building cannot outweigh the importance of life, of our officers, or the public. We could not risk serious injury to anyone.
Around 6 a.m. Friday, state police armed in riot gear lined up, creating a barrier in the streets. Governor Tim Walz explaining why the cops are there.
As we put a presence on the street to restore order, it is to open that space to seek justice and heal what happened.
The move to restore order comes after days of looting and arson. Many Minneapolis businesses have been damaged. Some have been destroyed. The initial outrage sparked by the death of George Floyd in police custody.
I can't breathe.
He was pinned to the ground with a cop's knee on his neck. Floyd's brother wants the officers at the scene to face charges.
Firing them, that was the first step.
The Justice Department and state prosecutors are investigating the case. Dozens of protesters have been arrested in Minneapolis. TV reporter Omar Jimenez and his crew were put in handcuffs early Friday morning.
Do you mind telling me why I'm under arrest, sir?
Omar's reports have aired on Currents News. He and his team were released within an hour of being taken into custody. Around the country, demonstrators took to the streets in Los Angeles, Columbus, Ohio, and Denver. In Memphis, Tennessee, an ambulance and 2 cars were hit by gunfire. In New York, a large demonstration kicked off in Union Square. A cop broke his baton while trying to control an unruly crowd that spilled onto the street. A protest that started here in Union Square moved down to Foley Square, and more are scheduled for here in the city tonight, including one in Brooklyn at Barclays Center. In Union Square, Jessica Easthope, Currents News. Christine?
So, Jess, we saw the protesters behind you before, and we know that you said they're going to the Barclays Center tonight. There'll be protesters there, but large gatherings are still banned in the city, right?
That's right, Christine. Social distancing laws are still in effect here in New York City, and Mayor de Blasio has said that the NYPD will still be doing a very big part of their job right now, which is breaking up large gatherings.
All right, Jessica, thanks so much. Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is calling for a peaceful response in the wake of George Floyd's death, saying, "We Christians must be fierce in our opposition to the evil of racism, but we must respond peacefully and remember the Lord's call to us to love one another as he loves us." President Donald Trump has also responded to the protests, but his remarks on Twitter have come under fire just a day after he took aim at social media companies with an executive order.
My executive order calls for new regulations under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act.
A day after President Donald Trump signed an executive order targeting social media companies in an apparent act of retribution for Twitter labeling two of his tweets about mail-in ballots potentially misleading, the Twitter wars continue. Early Friday morning, the president tweeted about the unfolding protests in Minneapolis, which resulted in a police precinct being lit on fire. President Trump called protesters their, quote, thugs who are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd. He also tweeted that he offered military support to the governor, saying, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Twitter put a warning label on that tweet, which says it violates Twitter's rules about glorifying violence, and the reaction came pouring in, including from the likely Democratic nominee for president. Joe Biden tweeted, "I will not lift the president's tweet. I will not give him that amplification, but he is calling for violence against American citizens during a moment of pain for so many. I'm furious, and you should be too." As for the executive order, it doesn't mean people would lose their Facebook or Twitter accounts. What it does is reinterpret a critical 1996 law shielding websites and tech companies from lawsuits.
They have a shield. They're not going to have that shield.
Among other things, Trump's order instructs the DOJ to consult with state attorneys general on allegations of anti-conservative bias. It makes it easier for regulators like the Federal Trade Commission to accuse platforms of suppressing free speech when imposing their own standards. Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi calling Trump's order a distraction.
What the president is doing is silly. It's silly.
Twitter responded to the executive order, calling it a reactionary and politicized approach to a landmark law. A violent night in Louisville, Kentucky at another protest against police. 7 people were hit by gunfire. The cops are saying all the victims were civilians and it's unclear who fired the shot. The demonstration was in support of Breonna Taylor, an African-American emergency medical technician. She was shot to death when police served a search warrant at her home. Her mom sent a statement to Governor Andy Beshear appealing for an end to violence.
She says Breonna devoted her own life to saving other lives, to helping others, to making people smile, and to bringing people together. The last thing she'd want right now is any more violence.
The statement went on to say that changes are being made and Breonna's legacy will not be forgotten. Here are some more headlines. The pandemic caused havoc with consumer spending in April. It was down nearly 14% across all major categories. The drop came despite a big boost to incomes from government stimulus checks. The Boston Marathon is being canceled for the first time ever. The 124-year-old race had been postponed from last month. Now organizers are scrapping it altogether because of social distancing rules. New York's largest hospital system, Northwell Health, is conducting a sweeping analysis of ventilators. Experts are raising concerns that an over-reliance on the machines may have actually cost lives. New York City is on track to emerge from the strictest lockdown in the country soon. The target date is June 8th. Governor Andrew Cuomo is saying the city is expected to meet all the health benchmarks to ease restrictions by then. That means in 10 days, non-essential stores could open for curbside pickup, plus construction and manufacturing could resume. Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens is continuing their efforts to feed the hungry, setting up a new pop-up food pantry today. The event at St. Finbarr's Parish in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, distributed nearly 17,600 meals, as well as 120 grocery vouchers. Catholic Charities has provided more than 71,000 meals to the needy since late March. And something to keep your eye on this weekend, Pope Francis will lead the world in a special rosary. The Holy Father will be praying at the Lady of Lourdes Grotto in the Vatican Gardens this Saturday, May 30th. The rosary will be in unison with Marian shrines around the world, asking for the Blessed Mother's help in the pandemic. So you don't miss the event, Net TV will air the Pope's Rosary live from the Vatican Gardens on Saturday, beginning at 11:30 a.m. There's a lot more news headed your way. Stranded at the drive-in, how a Queens diner has revved up business during the pandemic. Plus, an annual event to help young people grow their faith is still on despite the virus. We'll show you how. And what kind of impact the crisis could have on your child's development, the experts weigh in. Stay with us.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
After 2 months of stay-at-home orders, many New Yorkers are going stir-crazy, desperate to attend some kind of activity that's outside the house, any reason to just take a drive. Well, one Queens diner is stepping in to help, rolling down the big screen as cars roll on in. Currents News' Emily Druby has the throwback story from Astoria.
A beloved all-American pastime with a new twist. The Bel Air Diner in Astoria, Queens, converting their parking lot into a drive-in movie theater. Peter Delaportas, whose family owns the diner, says the idea was born from the quarantine.
You know, everyone wants to be out and be out in a safe way.
During the pandemic, parents have been racking their brains for ways to keep their kids entertained while also keeping them safe. Dr. Robert Tabali from our Ask the Doctor segment says while activities like playdates and sleepaway camps are fairly high risk, a drive-in is fairly low risk.
I see people pulling in, they're so excited, they're smiling. You know, some people haven't left the house in months.
It's providing good old-fashioned family fun, but also security in a world where, for businesses, there is little. Like many restaurants across the city, the diner saw a steep drop in their sales because of the pandemic, nearly 70%. The drive-in has kept the phones ringing and orders going out the door. They only see a profit from concessions, offering a special drive-in menu with items like queso blanco mock sticks. The food is ordered online and brought right to the customers' cars, wrapped up safely in to-go containers. It has allowed them to hire back their wait staff, no small feat, with many New York service industry workers currently out of a job.
It's almost like a dream. Like I didn't think it was going to blow up like this.
They've also been giving back to the community, donating hundreds of meals to those on the front lines. Tickets are sold per car, up to 45 can fit in the lot. Tickets sell out very fast, some in just a minute or two, but staff suggest that you keep trying, saying they're adding new shows all the time. In Astoria, Queens, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Another fun event taking place this weekend, Brooklyn Catholic Youth Day. Hundreds of young Catholics from around the Diocese of Brooklyn look forward to it every year, and this year is no different. It's going digital. Here to talk more about the new kind of celebration is Lucia Morales, the Catholic Youth Ministry Initiative Specialist for the Diocese of Brooklyn. And Lucia, this event was supposed to happen back in March with Father Jorge Ortiz-Garay as the keynote speaker. Then the pandemic happened, and tragically, Father Jorge passed away from the virus. So why is it so important to still hold the event, even virtually?
Well, you know, we're still mourning that big loss. But Father Jorge was a staple in his community. His life mission was for all to know Jesus and his love. He always opened the door to our young people. And when he was approached to do the event at St. Bridget's, it was yes without hesitation. Therefore, honoring not only his life's work and his mission to bring Jesus to everyone, we, despite the circumstances, despite the quarantine, you know, we really don't want to stop bringing God's word to our young people. And like he said, animal, right? Have courage. Therefore, we continue his mission with courage.
Oh, that's great. Now, the day is always full of faith and fellowship. But what are some of the different things we can expect this year, besides the idea that it's being held on YouTube?
Well, we really wanted we wanted the young people to know that it's for them and that it's make it their own. So we asked our young people to submit TikTok videos. That, it's hard being Catholic. It's hard being Catholic and young, but it is possible. So we wanted them to be themselves, to be young, creative, fun, while still being children of God, and to show others that it's possible, and incorporate fun things such as TikTok into our daily lives while still being disciples.
Oh, that's great. They must have loved that. Now, what do you hope the children and the teens who take part in the event, what do you hope they get out of it?
To know that Jesus loves them, to know that we'll face difficult circumstances like the one we're in right now. But despite that, we have to come together. We have to break bread together and honor Jesus, and we can still have fun while doing it. So.
All right, Lucia Morales, Catholic Youth Ministry Initiative Specialist. Thanks so much for the preview. Sounds like it's going to be a great time.
Thank you. It will be. Thank you.
And if you would like to join in on the Youth Day fun, just go to the Diocese's Evangelization YouTube channel. That's SEC Evangelization Catechesis. It all starts tomorrow at 1 p.m. Once more, that's SEC Evangelization Catechesis on YouTube. As the number of days away from preschool, daycare, and friends adds up, parents may be left wondering how stay-at-home orders and restrictions are impacting their young children's development. Whitney Wild spoke to one expert to find out.
After weeks away from preschool, Krista Justice doesn't worry 4-year-old Riley is falling behind in school. Instead, she fears Riley is missing out on life lessons.
She's really smart. My biggest concern is mainly her social awkwardness. I guess she doesn't know how to react with other children.
There's a big difference, obviously, between interacting with another child, with one of your peers or more peers in your classroom or in your program, than there is if you see them over Zoom.
Neil Horan, a child psychologist and expert in child development, says it's easy for kids to relearn colors and numbers.
Don't feel like you have to somehow have your child exactly where they would have been had they been in their preschool.
But he says early childhood is a critical time for building social and emotional skills. That's harder to do when kids are alone. Horan says it's crucial that parents find time to play with kids even for just a few minutes every hour.
If they are sitting in front of a screen, they are not really going to learn much about social emotional skills.
Horan adds parents should focus on one goal in this uncertain time.
And ultimately, right now, the most important thing you can do is support your child in terms of their emotions.
Krista says fortunately, Riley plays with her younger sister and cousins regularly.
We try to make life as fun as possible. We do school every day.
For now, she tries to maintain some sense of normalcy.
1, 2, 3.
Until regular life returns. In Washington, Whitney Wild, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, what about your child's immune system now that they're being kept isolated and we're all sanitizing our hands and everything we touch? The answers in our Ask the Doctor segment when we come back. It's that time of week again when we get the doctor's ear. Even though we're weeks into this pandemic, everyone still has questions about the coronavirus. Here with some answers is Dr. Robert Tabali, an infectious disease expert with the Catholic Medical Association. And doctor, the first thing I want to ask you about is masks. It's kind of controversial. We know wearing one protects others from you if you're sick or you sneeze or you cough. But what about if you're running or bike riding? There's a lot of controversy. Some say it's bad for your health to wear one. So should you wear a mask while exercising?
Well, certainly the surgical type mask, the thinner type mask,
would probably be good if you were exercising. One of the problems when people breathe more or exhale more vigorously, if they're vigorously singing or breathing heavy, they do emit more droplet particles and could emit more virus if in fact that they were an asymptomatic carrier or so on. The N95 type masks, there have been many reports of people breathing in their own carbon dioxide and such, and actually fainting, with these masks. So even a report of a young child in China that was forced to run like a 5-mile run with an N95 mask on who actually passed away. We don't know how true that report is, but the high filter N95s I'd stay away from if you were exercising. Use a surgical mask or a cloth mask instead, but it's a good idea to use one.
Good to know. All right, now that everyone is using antibacterial soap and hand sanitizer constantly, some are concerned there could be long-term implications on our immune systems. Your thoughts on that?
It really shouldn't affect the immune system at all. There might be one of the issues that we had initially 20 years ago when we started using these was alcohol absorption through the skin. That's really minimal. If you're buying the vodka-based hand sanitizers, that might be more of a problem than the ones that we have more research on. But that kills bacteria by actually dissolving their cell membranes. It doesn't really allow the bacteria to genetically modify themselves. There's some bacteria that are completely resistant to that type of thing. They have spores and so on. But for the regular bacteria that we worry about for urinary tract infections, skin infections, boils, and so on, the alcohol-based hand sanitizer is not going to induce any resistance in those bacteria.
But along those same lines, what about for young kids? Like, you want them to build their immunity, toddlers, you bring them out so they can be exposed to different things. Now they're all being kept home. Could this impact that at all?
Well, yes, but this is kind of a short-term problem. It's not going to be a lifelong problem. We do know that children who are in an extremely clean environment have a much higher rate of asthma or other serious allergies. And again, referring back to China, children that are raised on farms, like in China, there's no such thing as asthma, and allergies are very low because they have an immune tolerance to these things that they've been exposed to when very, very young, when the immune system is learning what is native and what is foreign to the body. But this is going to be going on for a few months in greater effect, but that's relatively short term. So it's not going to be going on for the rest of our lives.
Okay, good to know. And one more question. Dustin wants to know what COVID toe is. Can you explain that? And we have about 40 seconds.
A COVID toe is like a bluish or violaceous discoloration of the toe, which looks a little bit like frostbite, but it's due to small vessel clotting in the toe, which can be caused by COVID. We're learning that COVID can cause clots everywhere, and people after COVID infection have a risk of getting clots in their legs, which could move to the lung and so on. But this is a really serious complication. Look online for COVID toe. You can see pictures. If your children have it, it's more common in young people. They need to be seen right away and put on anticoagulants.
All right. Thanks again for the information, Dr. Tabali. Have a great weekend.
You too. Stay safe out there.
Remember, the doctor is in every Friday to tell you what you need to know about the latest medical developments involving the coronavirus and to answer your questions. So send them to askthedoctor@desalesmedia.org. Again, the email is askthedoctor@desalesmedia.org. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News Special Edition, anchored by Michelle Powers, will air this weekend starting Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Several rebroadcasts will follow, including on Sunday. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. We leave you now with a look at the real presence. Church doors are open again in Brooklyn and Queens. Though parishes may look different, covered in tape, our faith and the presence of Christ in our lives will always remain the same.